Oh God, I look so terrible. I'm so sick and so sleep deprived and in so much pain, and it's so hard to see what this has done to me. It's so hard to see how terrible I look. Um, nobody in Canada talks openly, openly anywhere, uh, about the financial harm that medical can cause you in Canada. Financial destruction. Nobody talks about this. I'm sitting here, it's almost 3 p.m. I have important business calls to make about different financial things, and I'm so sick I can't do it. And I'm deeper and deeper. Things get ruined, situations get ruined because I'm too sick to deal with them. Things get financially worse and worse. I can't troubleshoot because I'm too sick. I can't deal with stress. I can't deal with business calls. I can't have 3 hours of sleep and be making important financial decisions or business decisions, about the house, about financial things, about, decisions with my phone, signing contracts with people. Uh, I can't do it. I can't do it. And last night and today and until this moment, I'm just thinking, I'm feeling so bad about myself and blame, feeling like I'm blaming myself and stuff. And see, I've tried not to do that throughout these past 8 years. I've tried not to blame myself, and because I really am doing the very best I can. And if anyone else was in this position, I don't think they would, you know, they would be doing any better than I'm able to do. But when you're isolated and you don't have people cheering you on, or people to have back and forth conversations with, and just giving you an encouraging word, uh, uh, from day to day or week to week, you can start to beat yourself up and have all these defeating thoughts. And like, if we sat down and you heard how all this happened, how everything just fell to hell here, everything is destroyed, you would understand how it all happened. But people sit back and they don't know how. If 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 medical care is free in Canada, how can you become destroyed? How can you lose almost everything? Most of the time here, I did not think I was going to survive. I did not think I was going to live this long. I didn't think, you know, when I was sleeping only 1 or 2 hours a night, like for 4.5 years, when you're sleeping 1 or 2 hours every 24 hours, 365 days a year, you're out of your mind. And I say that, but also some of you watch the videos, and there's part of me, I didn't have the luxury of being able to mentally fall apart and lay in a bed day and night while someone paid my bills and got groceries and took care of business. I literally didn't have the luxury of mentally falling apart, of crying, of you know, sinking into depression and losing my mind and laying in a bed. And I don't say that in a derogatory way to those people who did and are in that position. There were times I would have loved to crawl in a hole and lay there in the dark for days and have the luxury of falling apart and just crying and not being forced to face everything and not being forced to walk in the snow in minus 35 degrees for groceries when my feet are swollen. I wanted the luxury to not have responsibilities. I couldn't mentally fall apart. I couldn't hide. And so I was forced into all the decision making, all the trying to advocate at appointments when I couldn't. When I had two brain cells that I was rubbing together to try to discern what the hell is going on here. And I'm making financial decisions. I was making lots of financial decisions based on I would sit here and determine what decision do I make about this or that. Am I going to be here in 6 months? Am I going to be here in a year? Will this financial decision that I'm making today matter in a year if I'm not going to be alive? Am I going to be alive? That's the kind of decisions I was making. I so desperately needed a family member or my spouse who's passed away. And I so desperately needed and still need someone to help me with all of everything. And I don't have that. And I say this, I hesitate to talk about any of this because there are screwed up people who can come in and take over your life and make the wrong decisions for you because they can't discern the situation. And that's a fact. For example, I had a social worker involved in this situation for about 5 minutes until I realized she could not figure any of this out. That this was real, this was serious medical issues, this was critical sleep deprivation, and in all her wisdom, she determined that I couldn't house clean because I didn't know how to multitask. I didn't know how to manage my time. When I've been, women are super fantastic at multitasking and managing their time, when they're raising families and they're running a tight ship and it's like bang, bang, bang. You're multitasking when you're watching TV in the evening before bed, you're watching TV and you're doing 20 things in your mind for the next day and the next week while you're watching TV. And your hands are idle, but you're doing 10 different things, and that was her great conclusion, that I didn't know how to manage my time anymore. I'm sleeping 1 hour a night and I'm out of my mind and physically falling apart and couldn't even stand at times. So ill and couldn't breathe and low oxygen. That was her determination, that I didn't know how to manage my time. So I say that out loud with trepidation because there's people who think that they're, smarter than you and they can't figure out your medical situation. They can't figure out that even though you talk like you got it all together, that you're not well enough. You need help in certain areas. I had friends that were friends on social media that would say to me, "Well, you know what? You're able to walk to the store, so you should be able to blah 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 blah." You can walk to the store with a brain injury and go buy something and walk back. It doesn't mean that you can, you know, balance your checkbook or do your taxes or make life big decisions. But it also doesn't, you're not, you know, inviting in someone. I've seen people, you know, doctors make terrible decisions for people who needed their help, you know, like terrible housing situations or also, you know, there's this saying, be careful who you're asking for advice. Don't be going to someone for advice who really doesn't care about the long-term decision of the long-term outcome for you of the decisions that are being made today. Like you might be going to a professional for help, and they don't care where you end up in a year or 5 years or 10 years. They don't care. They're looking at their clock and they want to be home by 5:30 for their own kids or whatever. Like, be careful who you ask for help, because they might not necessarily care about the outcome. And I'm sitting there, and I'm strong enough or self-aware enough not to let my thoughts slide and start to blame myself, because literally I was out of my mind making decisions that I couldn't make because I wasn't getting the medical care that I needed, because my brain was long-term sleep deprived and oxygen deprived. I had untreated apnea for years and years, severe, and my previous doctor, who's retired, we had figured out that I was probably having seizures while I was asleep. Now I know why, from untreated apnea, from long-term low oxygen. But he couldn't determine that I had been fighting to get into the sleep lab for years. They were refusing my referrals. And I said, I think something's happening to me at night. I think I'm having seizures. I bet you I was. I have Chiari malformation. I had undiagnosed, untreated apnea for years and years. And I'm walking around, you know, like I need help here. And there is no help. But I also shouldn't be blaming myself when I'm in medical crisis and I'm making crap decisions, because my brain is unable to make all these decisions. But can you become financially destroyed in Canada because you can't get medical help? Yeah. But, you know, if I explained it all in detail, you would totally understand. Like, number one, if you can't work, if you have to quit your job because you're so ill, because nobody can diagnose what's wrong with you, well, right there, your finances have gone to hell because you're not working. People can't understand that.